was suburban, white, gunned down by an African-American male.
Julius Jones is ending his teenage years with a murder rap that richly deserves a death penalty.
My brother's innocent.
I don't think he was a killer.
These people set me up.
Julius was not a choir boy.
Kids like to have nice stuff and do harebrained things to get them.
The gunman was wearing a red bandana. The police never tested for DNA.
There was a fear at that time of dangerous young black youth.
The only way you're going to stop crime is to start punishing the people who commit it.
This young man has never been given a fair chance.
I'm a dead man breathing right now. But there is hope. I never thought I was going to prison, let alone to death row. It'll be 21 years here in the next 30 days or so. I've been here longer than I was ever even alive for. I wrote a poem about that actually. What I miss. Snatching that catch. Hitting that three as the crowd goes wild. What I miss the most, making another smile. It hurts when you can't grant that to your mom in a while. To be the foundation of her struggles, daily adding to the pile. What I miss.
You know, so
My mother, she holds on to a lot of things. Anything that's in the house from the time that Julius got placed in the prison, it's like she feel like if she get rid of something, that's gonna get rid of him.
I mean, my brother has truly been traumatized. Most people don't have to live with the thought of, my son could be murdered for something they didn't do.
It hurts. And as long as I don't have to talk about it or think about it, I'm okay.
The Jones say their son and former star athlete has always been a kind and caring person, ever since he was a young kid.
The primary charge, murder in the first.
it was just like a nightmare, man. Never thought anything like that would have happened.
I didn't think he was a killer. I thought he did not choose the company he kept very well, but I don't think he killed Paul Howe.
Killed a totally innocent person, put 3 other lives at risk, so it was a crime that richly deserves the death penalty.
The jury found the 21-year-old guilty of murder and sentenced him to die.
We believe in the system, but the system, sometimes it doesn't work.
Let me pull up the transcript here.
My name is Amanda Bass, and I'm one of the lawyers for Julius Jones. Dale Bache is co-counsel along with me. We were appointed to Julius's case in 2016. Julius is at the very last stage before execution. His appeals are over.
In any criminal case, after the appeal process ends, a prisoner can ask the federal court to review their conviction and sentence.
So this is consistent with early accounts.
Okay.
And in the process of reviewing Julius's case, we were astounded. There was just so much evidence pointing away from Julius as the perpetrator of this crime. Does that make sense? Our goal is to get Julius a new trial by showing the courts that his original trial was conducted unfairly.
It was in the middle of summer, 1999. I had just turned 19. I was excited to go back to college, so I could play ball. Wednesday, July 28th, I was at my parents' house. hanging out with my brother and my sister. I was waiting on my friend to come in. It was just an ordinary night. I really didn't have any idea how my life could change.
My son's been shot out in the front yard. He got no pulse.
Where was he shot at?
I don't know. I was in bed. The kids came running in. He's laying out in the driveway.
Okay, do you know who did it, sir?
No, he just drove up with his kids and they shot him.
Who did?
The car. I don't know.
I was given a call by dispatch that there'd been a homicide at the Howe residence and was told to go there and assist.
Paul Howe and his sister and Paul's children were going to buy school supplies for the upcoming school year. And then on their way back, they stopped to get ice cream.
He pulled into his parents' driveway, which is where he and the girls were living at the time.
His sister and children were inside the car. They got out, and the suspect got in the Suburban and drove off.
There were 2 shell casings found at the scene, and the victim's sister was the only eyewitness.
Megan Toby described the shooter as a young black man wearing a red bandana, a white shirt, and a stocking cap or skull cap. She was not able to identify the shooter's face because it was covered.
Stocking hat, the bandana. At that point, it looked like a gang-related carjacking.
The GMC Suburban was a desirable car. It was easy to chop up, and they could make a lot of money just selling those parts.
I found out about it that morning. If you're a cop reporter and you have an AM deadline, first thing you do when you wake up is you turn on the news to see what happened overnight. The news of the homicide came on and I thought, oh.
The victim was white, middle class, gunned down by a young African American male in a wealthy suburb of Oklahoma City.
Edmond was over 85% white back in the 90s.
When integration went swing, many whites left Oklahoma City, and Edmond was one of the areas they moved to in record numbers.
It wasn't filled with gangs or filled with crime. People moved to Edmond to live a...
There was a fear at that time that was almost palpable of dangerous young black youth. The feeling was, if we don't act swiftly, and if justice isn't severe, we're all in danger.
When Paul Howell went to his parents' house last night, he was greeted by a carjacker, willing to take desperate measures to get what he wanted. He shot and killed Paul.
I think Paul and I were the same age. And from talking to his parents, I remember thinking, God, I could have been Paul Howell.
A church deacon, husband, and father of 2 is gunned down Wednesday. His 7- and 9-year-old daughters watch it unfold in the driveway.
A wonderful, wonderful voice, and that skip or that hop in his step. A wonderful person.
This was a high-profile crime. There was definitely pressure on the Edmond detectives. If you were an Edmond detective after this crime occurred, You were out on the street looking for these guys.
The suspect took off with a Suburban, so you know what it looks like. You have the tag number. You need to find that vehicle and go from there.
Calls are put out describing the Suburban. The police are soliciting information from people.
On Friday, 2 days after the Howell murder, the police stumbled upon the Suburban parked at a grocery store on the south side of Oklahoma City.
The Oklahoma City Police Department got involved when the vehicle was recovered. What they generally do is try to find their people that they get information from. They know people who know things, and so they tap those resources.
Kermit Lottie was an old school guy, ran a chop shop that was a couple of blocks down from the Central Grocery.
And Kermit was a long-time confidential informant. He said a guy named Day had been by to try and sell this Suburban. The police recognized Day as a nickname for Liddell King.
You mentioned Liddell King. I think all around the metro area, he'd been doing that for years.
Liddell King was actually a confidential informant for the Edmond Police Department. On Friday, Liddell King is brought into police custody.
Liddell was interviewed by the lead detectives in this case, Teresa Pfeiffer and Tony Fike.
I'm just a middleman relaying a message from this guy to that guy.
He told the police that on the night of the crime, a guy named Chris Jordan comes to his apartment.
I was at home watching TV, maybe 9:45 to 10 o'clock. I heard loud music pull up in front of the apartments. So I walked outside. I seen the west side.
Chris Jordan and west side?
A few minutes later, according to Liddell King, Julius Jones drives up.
I seen Julius drive a gold Suburban.
Liddell King says that Julius had stolen this vehicle and had approached him as an experienced middleman who could sell the Suburban.
Liddell tells the police that he went to the chop shop the next day that was owned by Kermit Lottie to see if he was interested in this Suburban. And Kermit told him there was a homicide connected to the car.
Hey man, I don't think I want to mess with no Suburbans right now. I heard some guy in Edmond got shot over a Suburban. After that, I went home. So I turned to channel 53. It really ain't really clicked to me until I seen a picture of the Suburban. Then that's what Julius got out of it.
It's on the news.
This is on the news. I see the shoe was supposed to have on and everything. And then I remember talking about him. He got a red bandana around his neck. He got a stocking cap on.
And that matched the description the victim's sister Megan Tobey gave on the night Paul Howell was killed.
So they came over to your house?
Yeah, where did Julius? And I said, Julius, that white t-shirt that you tried to take off when you got here, the red bandana that you had around your face, the same thing that got him on the TV. He just backed up. He said, okay. He said, the door came open, and the door went.
Next. What's going on? Well, we're looking for a murder suspect. So I look down the street, and it is Julius's house. And I say, Nah, it can't be mine, Julius.
This was Julius's room. I have a lot of his things, as you can see, some of his medals and trophies. At that time, I was looking at thinking how blessed that I am. I have 2 sons already in college. And I just feel like we had it going on. Everything was kind of working out. And everything changed that day.
The phone was ringing. And I'm like, hello, and he said, I don't even remember the cop's name. Well, I need to talk to your brother Julius, a serious matter. He committed a murder or something like that. I was like, what? I'm like, Mom, Dad, telephone, there's somebody saying that Julius is in trouble.
And they wanted to know if Julius was here.
I said, he's not here. When I went to open the door up, man, there's cops all on the front porch with their guns out.
All I heard at that time was what my mother and father was saying. Don't say anything, just keep your hands up and walk outside. Don't run or nothing, so that's what we did.
They were already looking for Julius, and they didn't seem too friendly, and I know how things can be. Some people have itchy fingers.
They pulled us all out of the house. It was about 9, 10 guns drawn on us.
It was so
From the time Liddell King spoke to the police, pointing to Julius as the shooter and Chris as the accomplice, Julius was the priority. And they were seeking a search and arrest warrant for Julius. But without a warrant, the police could not enter Julius's parents' house.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I come home, my whole block is covered with Oklahoma County Sheriff, Oklahoma City Department, helicopters, news stations. I can't even get to my house. So I asked one of the county sheriffs, what's going on? Well, we're looking for a murder suspect. So I look down the street, and it is Julius's house. And I say, nah, it can't be my Julius.
He's my middle child, and as some say, he's a lot like me. He liked people and liked learning and doing things.
They were strict about us keeping our grades up. You don't see my mother would be that way because she was a teacher, but my father was definitely about our grades. My father was a senior construction worker. My father was my hero. I mean, he was hard on us, but he was always teaching us.
Me and my brother were really close. It was like we were 2 parts of the same person. There was a lot of fights that I didn't get into because my brother kept me from getting into those fights.
Me and Julius grew up on the same block. My dad and his dad coached together. Mr. Jones and my dad would come pick us up from the game. Say we had a bad game. Julius would come out hot-headed or mad about his performance. And, Pops would say, hey, do we do that? And Julius would be like, no, sir.
He's exactly the type of student you want. He was always thoughtful. He always saw big picture.
got along with all sorts of people, curious about all sorts of things.
We were the only two African American males to graduate in the top 10% of our class. Julius attended the University of Oklahoma on an academic scholarship as well, which was big time. Our idea was try to get out and successful, then I could do it too.
It made me feel good for him to go to college. I was very proud of him. But I kind of noticed that Julius started changing a little bit.
He started getting in trouble.
Julius was not a choir boy.
He had some prior convictions. They were for petty thefts, for making a false statement in pursuit of a state ID.
My first year of school, being young, just wanted to have money. I got into shoplifting. I stole pages, I stole things that I could sell.
It's part of growing up, being rebellious, trying to be cool, trying to have nice clothes like, the kids that got nice clothes.
Kids like to have nice stuff. And you may do harebrained things to get them.
Wrong is wrong. I shouldn't have done it. And I'm not trying to hide it from anybody that I've broken the law. I have. But just because I broke the law does not make me a murderer.
Next.
Oklahoma City and Edmond police officers unleashed a massive effort, descending on this quiet neighborhood in search of 19-year-old Julius Jones.
Police found a bandana and a .25 caliber automatic.
It looked really bad.
Guns drawn, they staked out the alleged carjacking triggerman holed up in his parents' house.
Whenever we have a subject that's in the house that's wanted to be on something serious like a homicide, we have to be concerned about the safety of the officers and of the residents in that neighborhood. So the tactical team was called in.
While all this was going on, authorities announced yet another development.
The police track Chris Jordan to a payphone not far from Liddell King's apartment. According to Liddell King, Chris Jordan was the driver who took Julius to the scene.
Chris Jordan, we call him Westside. He was part of our basketball team. We were into basketball. Christopher Jordan was kind of into some other stuff.
Chris actually left Santa Fe High School because he was kind of involved with some gangs.
He certainly had friends that were in some gangs, but he was not a gang member.
I mentored Chris a lot. He just would want to come across as tough. I did not see him as a tough person, but he had a rep he wanted to build.
Julius went to the University of Oklahoma. Myself, I went to Grambling State University to play basketball. I kind of reconnected with Julius May of 1999. And Christopher Jordan is with him. And I said, yo, JJ, that's what I call him. What's the deal with you hanging with Westside? He's like, huh? And we just hanging. I thought something's not right about my best friend hanging with this gentleman.
After Chris Jordan was arrested, he was taken by the Edmond Police Department. Officers drove him to the Jones home, where he sat in a patrol car and spoke with the police.
They told him if he would cooperate, they would be more lenient on him, that it would be better for him if he helped in the investigation.
He said that he and Julius were going to go steal this car in Edmond, this Suburban. And Julius was the shooter, and he stayed in the car.
So now the police have Liddell King in custody, telling them that Julius is the shooter. They also have Chris Jordan implicating Julius as well. Everything pointed to Julius.
Okay, they're going up to the house right now.
The Oklahoma City tactical team entered the Jones home looking for the suspect.
We're not able to find anyone in the house, so obviously he had gotten out before the tactical team had gotten in place.
At that time, they do a methodical search to see what they can find.
The police went into the Jones home and came back out with a gun wrapped in a red bandana.
The evidence was found in the second-story closet crawl space.
And it looked really bad.
Police have recovered critical evidence, including the death weapon, and it has been found.
Julius was a good kid. He graduated from the same high school as my children. And I'm really shocked at everything that I've heard this evening. And if he's listening to me, or if you see me anywhere, give yourself up and let's get to the bottom of it.
On Friday, July 30th, I was in my mother's house. The police called, and they asked for me, and I'm like, who is this? Detective such and such. I said it was something to do with Chris, because I knew he was up to no good, and I didn't want to be in the middle of it. So I'm like, Julius ain't here. And I hang the phone up. You have to understand the environment I grew up in. You're not supposed to talk to the police. Bad things can happen to you or your family. So I left. I walk out the back of the house. And as I'm walking down the street, Chris Jordan is coming. He's in the car. I'm like, hey man, the police just called me. Chris tells me, don't worry about it, man. Just go warn my brother, the police looking for us. And when he said it, I thought he was talking about him and his brother. The police were looking for them, not me. But later that night, it was all over the news.
Police standoff for hours.
They were showing different shots of my parents' house.
Not able to find anyone in the house.
Nightmare.
Police have recovered critical evidence.
Police found a red bandana and a .25 caliber automatic.
The police got a tip that Julius was at the apartment of Chris Jordan's older brother.
I wake up and there are police everywhere. They tell me don't move, and I don't have on a shirt. I don't have on my shoes, nothing.
Julius told me that they stopped up on Western and 122nd and told him to get out.
According to the police report, at this point in time, Julius was being handed over from the Oklahoma City police to the Edmond police.
The detective took my cuffs off. I'm like, run. Out there, you run.
Told me, Dad, don't run. Don't run from the police because they'll shoot you.
I never turned around to look at what he was doing, nothing. I didn't move. When I just knew I was going to get killed.
You know, the thing about saying it could happen, could it have happened? It could have. But I would be very disappointed had that occurred. I don't see any of the officers that I work with doing anything like that.
And when they get in the car, the detective, he was like, you know you're going to fry it. I'm just still in a state of shock.
shoot that man for me, huh?
I can't explain to you how my heart was racing. They asked me, do I want to make a statement? And I'm like, I need to talk to a lawyer. I need to call my mother. It blindsided me. I'm flabbergasted. I'm blown away. Like, where did this come from? I understand how it looks at family selling my parents' house, but I had nothing whatsoever to do with this robbery or this man's life being taken. I didn't take that man's life.
Next.
I know for a fact my brother was at home.
19-year-old Julius Jones, the primary charge, murder in the first.
It was a crime that richly deserves a death penalty.
Police say Edmond residents can rest easier now, knowing the men they think are responsible for Paul Howell's murder are behind bars.
This is still a nice town. It is still a safe place, and that is why we so aggressively sought these individuals out.
After Julius was arrested and did not make any statements to the police knew they couldn't rely on just Liddell King's testimony or just Chris Jordan's testimony, that they needed to corroborate one another to convict Julius. So on Saturday, July 31st, they interviewed Chris.
Chris told them that he and Julius were looking for Suburbans, that they had followed the Suburban, and that Julius got out of the car that they were in, went up to the Suburban, and shot Mr. Howell. But when Chris Jordan makes statements to the police, he's all over the place.
He was inconsistent about the weapon. I didn't see a gun. Oh, I didn't touch a gun. Well, my fingerprints could have been on it. I might have looted it.
And the transcript of that interview, there were times when Jordan was implicating himself beyond just being an accomplice. At one point, Fight confronts him. Are you sure we are not looking at the wrong person? Are you sure you're not the person who perpetrated this crime? It's apparent from the transcript that Chris gets frazzled, but Teresa Pfeiffer intervenes. She says, you don't fit the description of the shooter. But that wasn't true. Based on Megan Tobey's description, he did fit. But she steered the conversation away and provided Chris with a way out.
They already focused in on Jones as a suspect and Jordan as a witness against him, and they were not going to unbalance that. So Pike and Pfeiffer had what they wanted. They had a star witness.
Are you Julius Darius Jones? Because of the murder charge, I'm denying bond at this time. Are you Christopher O'Neill Jordan? Mr. Jordan, you are charged with murder in the first degree. I'm denying bond at this time.
Chris Jordan was charged with felony murder, being involved in a robbery where a death occurred.
He's already pointing the finger at someone else. Then he can be a witness for the prosecution. Then he doesn't get the death penalty.
20-year-old Christopher O'Neill Jordan, primary charge, murder in the first.
Although he was part of a conspiracy to go out and commit a robbery, he did not participate in the shooting and had no way of knowing that the other person was going to be shooting.
19-year-old Julius Jones, the primary charge, murder in the first, with a request for the death penalty.
Killed a totally innocent person, put 3 other lives at risk, a sister and 2 young children. So it was a crime that richly deserves a death penalty.
City police, went to law school at night, got a job in the district attorney's office, kind of worked his way through the ranks, and eventually was elected. He was kind of a colorful character.
A lot of people called him Cowboy Bob.
And he wore this, cowboy string tie, a 10-gallon hat, and some cowboy boots. And this was the sheriff.
He has been described as one of the 5 most deadly prosecutors in the United States.
The only thing that we've got that even approaches justice is the death penalty.
I think the expression at the time was that he put notches on his belt for everyone he sent to death row.
People thought he was great. This guy's out there cleaning up this town. But he had a reputation of not always using ethical means to do that.
He sent 54 people to death row, but half of those cases ended up reversed because of several issues. Prosecutorial misconduct,
forensic scientists not being truthful when testifying,
and false informant testimony.
The culture of Bob Macy's office was, we'll get it done by any means.
Shortly after Julius was arrested, Bob Macy said publicly in the media that he was going to seek the death penalty against Julius.
He was an icon here. And so, you've already poisoned the well. Bob Macy wouldn't seek the death penalty if the person didn't deserve it.
But that's a superficial answer. And it's an answer that ignores the fact that there's compelling evidence pointing to Julius's innocence. Dale and I have come to Oklahoma City to investigate the state's case against Julius Jones. As federal public defenders, we are looking into evidence that Julius was convicted and sentenced to death in violation of his constitutional rights.
It was the most high-profile murder in the county that year.
Under District Attorney Bob Macy, the number of death penalty cases that came out yearly put a substantial burden on defense lawyers. There were often not enough experienced capital trial lawyers.
My name is David McKenzie. I was the lead trial counsel for Julius Jones. At the time, I didn't have any death penalty trial experience.
At the time of the Kernan, I'd never tried a capital case.
One of the disadvantages of working in the public defender's office is you don't have a whole lot of time. I don't know what my caseload was, but I'm sure it was more than 70 or 80.
According to Julius, David did not see him frequently during his time at the Oklahoma County Jail.
I wrote the Bar Association about it. You have to remember I was 19 years old. But I know you have to prepare witnesses, and I'm like, how am I going to be prepared to testify?
The meetings wouldn't really last that long because he wasn't chatty enough to keep things going and get the information we needed and make sure his needs were met. Then we would leave.
I thought that he did not choose the company he kept very well, but I don't think he killed Paul Howell. Julius had an alibi.
I never went to Edmond that night.
When they said what time the man actually got shot, I was like, well, that takes my brother out of it. Because I know for a fact my brother was at home.
Paul Howell was shot in Edmond a little after 9:30 p.m. Julius's mother, father, older brother, and younger sister Antoinette say that Julius was at home during the relevant time frame of the shooting.
I was at my parents' house.
We were sitting here eating spaghetti.
He had like a big plate of spaghetti.
While I played Monopoly with my brother and my sister.
They were playing Monopoly.
Just getting done playing Monopoly.
My wife had to take my son, Antonio, to work. I left like at 9:30 to go to work at 10. I left him at the house. So there's no way he could have skipped to Edmond and shot that guy at 9:30.
I'm innocent. I was speaking with my family, and I just figured the truth would come out, and it would let me go on, because I had faith in the system. I was naive.
Next.
There's compelling evidence pointing to Julius's innocence.
Julius had an alibi.
There was one piece of pivotal information that would have changed the whole course of the case.
That picture of Julius could save his life.
My son's been shot out of the front yard. He got no pulse.
The victim was white.
Where'd you shoot that man for me, huh?
My name is Julius Jones. I've been incarcerated for the last 18 years.
There was just so much evidence pointing away from Julius as the perpetrator of this crime.
My brother's innocent.
I don't think he was a killer.
One of the jurors said, well, they should just take the out back, shoot him, and bury him under the jail.
We may be still seeing the bad old days, and the bad old days may wreck Julius.
The gunman was wearing a red bandana. The police were tested for DNA.
So the jury never heard Julius's side of the story. This young man has never been given a fair chance.
That's insane. That the person that matches the description of the shooter is walking the street, and Julius is set to be executed.
I'm a dead man breathing right now. But there is hope.
The Jones say their son and former star athlete has always been a kind and caring person ever since he was a young kid.
19-year-old Julius Darius Jones. The primary charge, murder in the first.
Well, the first day of the trial, I really didn't know anything about the case. My name is Martin Johnson. I was the jury foreman on the case. As far as Mr. Jones, he had to be a pretty bright kid. He had an academic scholarship. And we're talking about murder. You wouldn't even have thought that something like that could cross his mind.
In their opening statements, the defense brought up the lack of evidence.
There were no fingerprints on the car that would tie Julius Jones to the crime.
The prosecution had the firearm and a red bandana, evidence that was recovered from the Joneses' home.
The victim's sister, Megan Toby, was the only eyewitness to the crime.
Megan Toby testified that the shooter was wearing a stocking cap, a red bandana, and critically, she also said that this person had up to an inch of hair sticking out from underneath the stocking cap.
That is crucial because at the time of the crime, Julius had short hair. 9 days before Mr. Howell was killed, Julius was picked up for police to take a booking photo. It's not possible for hair to grow that quickly, so could not have been sticking out of the cap.
That picture of Julius could be the evidence that the jury might say, that's gonna save his life.
Chris Jordan, meanwhile, wore his hair in cornrows. And it stuck out at the sides. You just need one person to have a reasonable doubt for Julius to be acquitted.
I did cross-examine the sister of Mr. Howell. We talked about the hair length to show that her physical description, which she was sure of, was not that of Julius Jones, that it was, if anybody, Christopher Jordan.
But the booking photo was never presented to the jury. There was no explanation regarding the hair.
We were quite shocked, to be honest, that David McKenzie did not provide the photo to the jury. It was a huge error.
I don't remember anything about any hair sticking out or anything like that.
The state's case revolved around the co-defendant, Christopher Jordan, who said that Mr. Jones was the person who had the .25 caliber pistol, that he went up to Mr. Howell and shot him in the head.
Christopher Jordan came in, he was in his prison garb and shackled.
Chris basically held their case together because he was there.
Christopher Jordan's role was portrayed primarily by the state as just an accomplice.
They said that his role was to drive the car when they picked out somebody that they were going to jack the Suburban from.
Christopher Jordan testified at trial that he and Julius had followed a Suburban into this neighborhood in Edmond, parked a significant distance from the driveway. Julius got out of the car and went to the Suburban. And that he heard, but did not see, Julius fired the shot that killed Paul Howell.
Basically, Chris Jordan's testimony could corroborate Liddell King. Both of them said that it was Julius.
Where Chris Jordan testified that he was standing, there are houses. Rather than saying that he only heard the shots, he said that he saw Mr. Howell fall to the ground.
Chris would have had to have been closer to the driveway than he testified at trial to see what was going on.
Based on what he says at trial, his statements, increasingly distance himself from the scene. We were astounded that there was just so much evidence pointing to others that was never pursued, including evidence that could have explained how the gun and the red bandana ended up in Julius's parents' house. The night that Paul Howell was killed was a Wednesday. Chris Jordan, in his statement, said that the next day, Thursday night, he had spent the night at Julius's parents' home.
He said he was locked out of his grandmother's house. He had never spent the night before, but I didn't think nothing of it.
Julius slept on the downstairs couch. Meanwhile, Chris slept in the upstairs bedroom.
And that bedroom is where the gun and bandana would be found.
Significantly, the following day, both Liddell King and Christopher Jordan were directing the police's attention to the home of Julius Jones's parents as a place that would have incriminating items of evidence. Chris Jordan was in the back of a police vehicle talking to detectives who were telling people inside the home where to potentially look. This makes us highly suspicious of what exactly Chris was doing in that room the night before.
But the police never tested the red bandana for DNA.
In my opinion, he was full of lies. So at that point, we needed to destroy his credibility. We needed to catch him in his inconsistencies, so that the jury might believe that Chris Jordan was potentially the shooter.
Most of the defense case was resting on showing that the co-conspirator's a liar.
The cross-examination of Chris Jordan was a disaster.
I thought I did a terrible job of cross-examining him. I exploited his credibility a lot further and showed him to be a liar. I typically don't have those days in the courtroom.
The courts, they don't care that, oh, my lawyer had a bad day. He just didn't do his damn job. He might have had a bad day. I'm having a bad life.
And Chris Jordan came off smelling like a rose to the jury.
By testifying against Julius, Chris Jordan was avoiding the death penalty.
For sure he derived benefit. That's why you make deals.
He entered a plea to murder in the first degree, and he took a sentence of 30 years. But he was not going to die.
Next. The beast is hungry, he's got to be fed. The beast is the system. And whoever feeds the beast walks.
I'm glad that it's finally started to come to a conclusion on the killer of my son. Unless you've been through a situation with a child being killed, I don't think you could ever understand the trauma and the stress.
After the state rested their side of the case, I was hoping to get a clear view of what the defense had to say about what was going on.
When it was the time for the defense to put its case on, the lead lawyer simply stood up and said, the defense rests.
Like, what? David the kid good for the team. Well, we're not calling me with this. I try to stay calm. But eventually I give in to what they tell me. Because, I mean, they're the one.
I met with his parents. They said that at the time of the killing, Julius was home with them playing board games. But Mr. Jones in jail letters had written to his girlfriend that he was somewhere else. He wasn't at home with his parents.
David McKenzie believed that while Julius was in jail, he had written a letter to his former girlfriend saying that he was not at his parents' home at the time of the murder between 9:30 and 10. They believed that the family was asking them to put on a false alibi and didn't put it on.
They told us stuff like, well, nobody's gonna believe your alibi. And I'm like, but how can they not take what's...
That's the only thing that a jury could hold on to. But I was low man on the totem pole.
I have no idea where he even up with the aspect of me being on the south side. I never wrote him a letter to her that I was on the south side when the murder happened. I never said this.
And I cannot recall why we didn't call her. I don't know if it was just mere negligence on my part, but it sounds, as I'm thinking about how I tried to help Mr. Jones, that maybe I was deficient.
So the jury never heard Julius's side of the story.
The night Mr. Howell was shot, I was still in my parents' house. And I was waiting for my friend Chris to come get me. I asked him, where the hell you been? Eventually he tells me that they was go through something didn't go right. The next day, they were getting engaged me. Somebody Christmas. And he was like, well, you do me a favor. You help me move this truck and I'll give you something. So I'm like, sure, I'll follow you. But I never got into the suburban. I drove to the other car. I followed him to the south side to the grocery store. And we ended up going down the street to Kermit Body Shop. And I never got out of the car. And he comes out and he looks spooked. He's like, man, he don't want it. There's somebody on the truck or something. I'm like, what? Granted, I definitely was doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing. I'm not trying to minimize that. I knew it was hot. But I didn't know someone was dead. I have no doubt that these two are involved in this murder. And people set me up, take us off. Because they knew somebody was involved with this.
The dynamic was one where, Julius would have been a convenient patsy.
The state's case against Julius was based on the testimony of people who were hugely unreliable.
Dale King was in the business of having cars stolen. He was arrested, but Liddell King would always walk because he was smart. He knew that the first one to give information would get the best involved in it. My opinion, Liddell King said a murder took place. Somebody's got to give somebody up, and he's pointing the finger at Jones that he's the trigger man.
Liddell King was an informant for Edmond police. Around the time of Julius's trial, Liddell King had a pending bogus check charge, and as a convicted felon with 3 prior felonies, he was required to serve at least 20 years. It was dismissed entirely. When Chris Jordan testified against Julius, the prosecution told the jury that he was required to serve at least 3 years of a life sentence before being eligible for parole. Chris Jordan got out after 15 years on the dot.
They just released him. No parole, no nothing. It's see you later. Have a good life. That's insane. That the person that matches the description of the shooter is walking the street, and Julius is set to be executed.
While Christopher Jordan was in the Oklahoma County Jail, he discussed the case with numerous inmates, bragging about being the actual perpetrator of the crime and pinning it all on Julius. One of the witnesses, Manuel Littlejohn, said that Christopher Jordan had told him that Julius was not even there, and that Paul Howell was killed. And that Christopher Jordan, hid the bandana with the gun wrapped in it in the attic of the Jones home.
I have received nothing in return for this information. It made me angry that Christopher Jordan was willing to let another man get the death penalty when Mr. Jordan was bragging in the jail that he was the actual. Is that true or correct?
This inmate was already facing a life sentence without parole. The other inmate, Manuel Littlejohn, had already been sentenced to death. So they were not going to get any lesser sentences for coming forward with this information. But the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals basically decided that these witnesses wouldn't have been. Is one of the leading causes of wrongful convictions, particularly in Oklahoma. We have a big problem in the American criminal justice system related to the relationship between informants facing criminal charges who are incentivized to provide information that will get them the best deal, and police and prosecutors who are under pressure to solve cases and who need witnesses in order to do so. It's a marriage of convenience, but often at the expense of truth and justice.
Towards the end of the trial, I just had this sinking feeling that nothing was going to go my way at this point.
The jury went out to deliberate.
Having heretofore found the defendant Julius Darius Jones guilty of murder in the first degree, fix his punishment at death.
I know my brother didn't do this crime. I know my brother didn't take a life.
You go with your heart more than anything else when you're doing a murder case like this. It's kind of what you feel in your gut. It just felt right. It's a bad thing, but it still felt right the way the verdict came out.
I'm just sobbing. And he gives me his pocket square and says, it's gonna be okay. I should have been that way for him.
Once I got away from the camera, I could no longer contain the emotions that were inside of me. I've never felt so abandoned by God in my life. Just completely alone.
Next.
We recently learned that the jury in Julius's case might have been tainted by racial prejudice.
And one of the jurors said, well, they...
Julius Jones is ending his teenage years with a murder rap.
The jury found the 21-year-old guilty of murder and sentenced him to die.
You know, it's just heartbreaking, the fact that this young man who has never been given a fair chance is facing execution.
I'm a dead man, talking and breathing right now. But because of my new lawyers, there is hope.
I would certainly say that Julius's case is a miscarriage of justice.
Edmund's been a prick to this town since I was old enough to realize it.
It turns out that racial bias played a role in a case that happened in Edmond. Would it be surprising? Unfortunately, no.
Edmond was and is a place where black folks have been maligned and unwelcome.
In Edmond, the law enforcement will always pick out the black individuals. When you get pulled over, you always have the notion of, oh, a black man. In Edmond, you might get mistreated, you may get beat down, or something else may happen to you.
And then in this case, you have a very prominent white male victim killed by a young black male. And this fed into the sentiment that this is a dangerous criminal who we will need to marshal all of our forces to bring into custody.
I was always reluctant to attribute certain things to racism. But then I remember things like the way their house was ripped apart by the police.
You know, you come back to your house and your house is all tore up. They cut the mattresses. You got mustard and ketchup on the floor. They took all my suits down and threw them on the floor. They stood on them. Why would you do that?
It wasn't just, we're doing our job. They were sending a message. It was hate.
We were looking for evidence that would relate the suspect to the crime scene.
Of course, there were items that were broken because teams do from time to time.
A lot of us saw that as a warning that we may be still seeing the bad old days, and the bad old days may wreck Julius.
We recently learned that the jury in Julius's case might have been tainted by racial prejudice. In a recent case, a conviction was overturned because at least one member of the jury harbored racial bias. In Julius's case, the jury was majority white with one African American juror.
Other African Americans were struck by the prosecution for various reasons, like the person was a crime victim or knew someone in law enforcement. But white jurors who had those issues were allowed to sit on the jury.
I was a juror on the case. This thing has weighed on me for a long time. What happened was several of us from the jury were waiting on an elevator. This was well before deliberations. And one of the jurors said, well, they should just take the out back, shoot him, and bury him under the jail. Didn't matter what happened. This was a black man that was on trial for murder. He did it. It didn't sit right with me. And I went to the judge with that the next day.
The trial record itself shows that this juror told the judge, I heard someone say, this is a waste of time, they should just take Julius out and bury him. But there's no record of a racial slur, specifically the N-word, as part of that comment. So the judge at the time concluded that the comment was harmless because the jurors affirmed that they could all still be fair and impartial. But for us, the evidence of the N-word being used is entirely new information.
The juror was never dismissed, was never replaced with an alternate.
The juror might have persuaded others to find Julius guilty or sentence him to death. And we just wanted to give you guys a few updates. So the first thing is that in talking to jurors, we've learned that the juror used racial slurs to refer to Julius. The Supreme Court has said that where racial prejudice plays a role on jurors' decision-making, that entitles a criminal defendant to have his or her conviction overturned.
So we're working to put that evidence together and take it to the court.
Right now, the first goal is to try to get the courts to give Julius a hearing. The court would then decide whether or not to grant him a new trial. The other significant thing that we've learned is that the district attorney agreed to DNA testing. They agreed to test the red bandana. And we're hoping there's something there that can identify who the real shooter was.
It's good. It's good. You know, it just gives you hope, and you're giving me hope.
The last time I got to talk to him, he said I wasn't even given a chance to talk. You've given him a voice without him even having to speak. It made me feel good. It made my parents feel good, you know. And it kind of sparked life into my brother. And I said, you hold on to the truth. Regardless of what happens, we know the truth.
I let Julius know that we're obviously fighting for him. He's aware of the hurdles that we face. And he's also, he's also aware that he could lose his life, but he's still hopeful.
What happened to Mr. Howell and his family is terrible. It's very tragic. Justice has not been served. Because the person who took his life didn't walk in the streets. I want to try, I want to tell those jury why I'm innocent.
Next.
The police never tested the red bandana.
Which could be enough to have his conviction overturned. Our attempt to get back into state court with the new information of this juror's racist comment was unsuccessful. At this point, Julius has already gone through the appellate process and is coming up to the very last stage before execution.
This is where the gun and bandana were found.
Is that high enough?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The police never tested the red bandana that the gunman was wearing.
If we can get the bandana tested, it might prove that Julius was not the shooter, which could be enough to have his conviction overturned.
My name is Lawrence Kobylitsky. I'm a professor emeritus of forensic science. The evidence consists of a bandana which has a stain, and that stain has a contribution of 3 donors.
The lab determined that there was a partial DNA profile that was consistent with Julius's DNA profile at 7 out of the 21 tested genetic markers. These results do not constitute a match under law enforcement standards.
Now, how the DNA got there is a very, very important question.
The red bandana was located in Julius's bedroom, and it was located after the police handled a number of items in Julius's bedroom.
When you find something in a home of a suspect, you've got to be especially careful because you never know how the DNA got on an object.
The district attorney and the Oklahoma Attorney General immediately came out and said, these lab results prove that Julius is guilty.
There's been some suggestion that it was his accomplice, Mr. Jordan. There's no evidence to support that, particularly after the red bandana was tested and his DNA wasn't found on it.
The lab could not exclude Chris Jordan from being among the 3 or more minor contributors.
And I hope that God will not forsake me. That people will open their eyes. Because this could be their child. This could be them. In October 2019, when we finally filed my application for commutation.
And in that application, we detail the systemic failures in Julius's case that render his trial, his conviction, and his death sentence fundamentally flawed.
My hope is to get my sentence commuted to time served. I'll be in a position to try to, clear my name.
We don't know when the commutation hearing is going to happen. We don't even know if there will be a commutation hearing. We are hopeful. At the same time, we are also fully aware that the commutation process and the decision of the Pardon and Parole Board on Julius's application is the only thing that stands between him and execution.
It's exhausting to try to keep up with hope, but I didn't want my family to give up.
Back before the trial, my father-in-law passed. They buried him at our church, and they let Julius go. And that's the last time that I hugged him or touched him. I see him through a glass, and it seems unreal. It's like you see somebody and that they're not living.
He told me stay strong. And he said, just the fact that I know that y'all still gonna be living gives me peace. And I hate when he say that, you know, that makes me mad. Cause I don't ever want him to give up. Cause if he give up, I'm gonna give up.
Next. We have seen a lot of very high-profile individuals take up his case and elevate the injustice of his case.
I won the fight. We need him to get out.
Floyd. From Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas, the protesters and their messages, Black Lives Matter, asking what will be done in this country to end this cycle.
I can't breathe. Please, the name of
You don't get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
Watching the video of Mr. George Floyd on the ground reminded me of this incident that Julius has described. After his arrest, the police officers stopping the car at an intersection, taking him out of the car, and telling him, "Run, N-word, I dare you." And Julius describes not moving a muscle.
In Oklahoma City, Black Lives Matter chapter decided to do a rally here in Oklahoma City.
Thousands standing together this weekend to protest for George Floyd.
There were so many people in the crowd who also had our Justice for Julius sign.
Glad people are out protesting. I hope, the powers that be are listening to society.
We have seen a lot of very high-profile individuals take up his case and elevate the injustice of his case. People like Kim Kardashian.
Now is the time where we all just have to come together. I won the fight. We need him to get out.
We went from 500,000 people signing the petition for the governor to take another look at Julius's case to 6 million people in a month's time.
I've received letters and support from quite a few different celebrities. Common, John Legend, Blake Griffin.
Me and Julius played for Blake Griffin's father, so we knew Blake when he was a little guy with a little curly hair, so it was really cool to see that come full circle in him supporting, Julius's innocence.
Those guys on my dad's teams were our heroes. Julius is one of those guys who stuck out because of his character. So recently I wrote a letter to the governor of Oklahoma highlighting just my belief that Julius wasn't given a fair trial.
It meant a lot to have so many different people, speak up for me.
Everybody ready?
In early July 2020, the Attorney General held a press conference.
Julius Jones murdered Paul Howell in cold blood in front of his sister and daughters. No celebrity imploration or profusion of misinformation will change that. There is a good deal of misinformation out there. Infamous red bandana. The conclusive results of the DNA profile show the probability of the DNA belonging to someone other than Jones is 1 in 110 million. We've heard from a lot of celebrities. I know that they believe they're doing the right thing based on what they've been told. I'm just not sure that they've been told the right thing consistently.
I want to be absolutely clear. My son Julius is not guilty of Mr. Howell's murder. We watched Julius's entire future disappear in an Oklahoma courtroom when the verdict of guilty was read.
Julius is encouraged and humbled by the groundswell of support that has emerged for justice to be done in his case. He's touched by that. He is also aware that this is his last shot.
Next.
The decision of the Pardon and Parole Board is the only thing that stands between him and execution.
Advocates for death row inmate Julius Jones are increasing from Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City to Baker Mayfield. They're all calling for clemency.
We are hopeful. At the same time, we are also fully aware that the commutation process and the decision of the Pardon and Parole Board is the only thing that stands between him and execution.
I'm just grateful that people are standing up and it gives me another reason to feel like I should fight harder to live. I hope we can get to a point where we can actually get justice for the Howe family as well.
I don't think there's anybody on the planet, no matter your race, no matter your religion, no matter your political party, that can say that Julius Jones received a fair trial.
My hopes for the coming months to explain why I deserve my freedom. I hope people will take a moment and realize no matter what color somebody's skin is, we are all human beings. I want this to be for my family. Even with so many people caring, I'm still in prison.